this is kind of a bittersweet conference in one regard. We have been so blessed to have great leadership on our boards and in our membership. But at the same time, it comes a time for all of them to want to go do something else and to retire. And I'd like for everybody who's not going to be back next year to please stand up so we can give you a round of applause. We thank you. We thank your families. We thank you for the leadership that you've provided to your communities and your counties, and we know you'll all be missed. On our board here, I would really feel neglected if I didn't acknowledge at least one board member. We have two that's not going to be back next year. First of all, Don Howarth from Comanche County. Stand up, Don. And a person who has been a county commissioner and a member of these boards for as long as I think counties have existed. I accused him this morning of being born county commissioner. Served 36 years on behalf of the people within his county, has given unselfish thousands of hours to the board on a volunteer basis. Let's give a round of applause to Johnny Mann from Garvin County. Whenever we had a fight, Johnny was always there to start it, or he was there to finish it. Amen. And I think those of you that know him well, that's a pretty avid description of Johnny Mann's life with the county government. But Johnny has been he has just been a tremendous public servant. And the question was asked this morning in our earlier group was what makes a politician? And I think unfortunately there's been a negative connotation that came with the word that someone that entered themselves into public service. And I think it disparages the actual intent of what everybody in this room does that's had the honor of being elected to an elected position. My interpretation when they talk about a career politician is someone who spends 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, thinking about trying to make their state better, their county better, their city better, whatever it may be. So I'd like to ban the term in the legislature, Mr. Speaker, but I think that there's a lot of pride comes with the fact that you'll make that commitment. You steal from your family, you steal from your own personal time to come out and serve on behalf of others. And you're making decisions that maybe other people just simply don't want to make. And with that, I think it ought to come with a tremendous amount of gratitude. And what seems to be the public spirit out there now is to disparaging the fact that people are willing to give of their time and effort. So with that, we're going to start with our speaker group this morning. And as normally happens in watching the legislature, there's one or two personalities that kind of crop on our radar screen. And we've called them young rock stars. You may not know them today, but I can assure you if they stay engaged, you will certainly get to know them during their career in the legislature. So it's our honor and pleasure this morning to have one of these young legislators who represents House District number 93 here in Oklahoma City, South Oklahoma County, and I guess maybe even part of Cleveland County. He can explain that. But he is a regular on the Flashpoint show on Sunday morning, For those of you that pick up Oklahoma City television, he represents himself well, he represents the legislature well, he represents his party well. But I think more than anything else, he just brings the hopes and dreams of spirit as to what legislative effort's all about in the state of Oklahoma. Mickey Dollens was a fifth grade teacher at U.S. Grant High School, grade school. He's really got an unusual background. He was a running back for SMU Mustangs. But what I didn't know until I got to read in his bio, he was also a member of the USA bobsled team. So, he and his wife, Tanya, and their son, Dean, live in South Oklahoma City. And I think that you'll understand what we're talking about as you get to hear him here this morning. But let's welcome one of our new rock stars in the legislature, Representative Mickey Dollens.
Wow, thank you, Gene, and especially thank you for describing me as a running back. I was a D lineman, but I've always wanted to carry the ball. Well, happy Halloween, everyone. I've got some scary stories from the Capitol to share with you today, and they're all true. The first one, and Speaker McCall is going to like this, at least 76 members in the House will have 2 or fewer years of experience entering the 2019 legislative session, and I'm one of them. But if you account for all of the special sessions we've had, I'm practically almost terming out. I've met quite a few new people here today, so I wanted to give you just a brief overview of who I am and where I'm from. I'm a fifth-generation Oklahoman. I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, but I've lived in Skytook and Claremore. I graduated Bartlesville in 2006 and earned a football scholarship to SMU, the same school where players used to take a pay cut going from college to the NFL. Unfortunately, I never received any of that, but I guess that's a good thing. I tried out for the NFL and ended up getting recruited to the Olympic bobsledding team. And they recruit football players because the sprinters, once you crash one time, they're gone. But us D linemen, we keep coming back for more. That gave me the opportunity to travel outside of the country for the first time. I got to compete in Europe and Switzerland and Austria, and it really opened my eyes and perspective for when I came back to Oklahoma City. I worked for a year and a half as a roughneck on rigs in Dibble and Davis, Oklahoma. I worked on an old Kelly rig built in the 70s. It took about 5 people to man, and it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of new people, and then I went to a much modern, newer company, and I stepped foot on that platform, and I realized that it only took 2 roughnecks to operate everything, and all the other jobs that we used to do, like throwing chains and the iron roughnecks, were displaced with automation. And that was the first time when I realized, wow, okay, some of these jobs are leaving, not because of other people, but because of automation is replacing these. Well, when the oil dipped, I decided to move on to new things, and I became a teacher, and I taught at U.S. Grant High School. And I taught for about a year and a half, and I actually bought a home just right down the street. And then in 2016, education was cut not once, but twice, and 19 teachers at U.S. Grant were forced to be laid off, and I was one of them. So with all of my newfound time, I decided to hit the doors and decide to run for office. And I knocked about 20,000 doors in my district with the help of a lot of friends and colleagues, and I was elected in 2016. But that's enough about me. We're here to talk about where our state's been over the last year, but more importantly, where we are headed. Every once in a while I get an odd look when I tell people I'm proud to be an Oklahoman. In fact, polling right now in our state shows that most Oklahomans think we're headed in the wrong direction, and it's really hard to blame them. We have prisons at 113% capacity. Roads are in desperate need of repair, especially you in rural counties know this. And we have schools that went down to 4-day school weeks. And a state that once prided itself in its ability to come together, we call it the Oklahoma Standard, has now found itself more and more divided in these turbulent times. And these problems, they feed off of each other, and they build on each other. But I'm still proud to be an Oklahoman because of the people in your counties. It's the people of this state that make me proud to be an Oklahoman. In Tulsa, we have the Tulsa Vision Project. In Oklahoma City, we have MAPS. Our universal pre-K is looked at around the country as a model for what universal pre-K should be. Oklahomans' desire for criminal justice reform has led to some great measures, and we're on the right track, but there's still a heck of a lot to do. I mentioned the overcrowded prisons. We need updates to them. Our corrections officers need additional support, better wages. It also increased and restored funding to education. Obviously, we'll talk about the teacher walkout. And another shining light is ODOT's roads initiative. The people of this state are more energized for change than ever before. Oklahomans know that when someone is pushing you around, we stand our ground. You hold your head high and you demand to be treated fairly. Teachers led the way last April when they marched to the Capitol and rallied for restored funding to education. They stood shoulder to shoulder and went to the Capitol and fought for change, and they took those experiences back to their communities and their neighbors' doorsteps, and they shared what they saw, and it's made a difference. But historically, teachers weren't the first ones to do that in Oklahoma. Even before Oklahoma became a state, back in 1882, when we were just a territory, coal miners who felt that they were not giving a fair shake did the same thing. They went on strike. And then railroad workers in 1907 stood shoulder to shoulder and demanded to be respected. And the Farmers Alliance, the same year, in the 1930s, 800 coal miners went on strike in Okmulgee County. They stood up and made sure that the working men and women of the state had a voice. This is a history to be proud of. It's a history of looking forward at a brighter future and working together to make it a reality. Now, I know even in this room there's a wide range of beliefs when it comes to organized labor, but my point is Oklahomans have always known that as Oklahomans we deserve to stand tall and succeed together. We deserve to work a job that we're proud of and a job that we can support a family on. And that common ground is what gives me hope. But now let's look at where Oklahoma is headed. While some of the larger budget problems are tough, when you look at the local level, there's a lot to be proud of. In our big cities, as I mentioned, we have investment, we have revitalization. The Gathering Place in Tulsa is an incredible park, and I can't wait to visit. And soon Oklahoma City will have Scissortail Park, and we're making great headway on the Wheeler Park District. But even outside of the cities, there seems to be trends going up. Take Mays County, for example. Google recently decided to expand their data center, ramping up an additional $600 million in investments. However, as I mentioned before, the threat of automation is a big issue to me. Jobs we are used to being able to count on simply won't be around pretty soon as technology displaces our human workforce. And that scares a lot of people. But I view this as an opportunity for Oklahoma to take the lead. If we put in plans right now, we can look at how we can take advantage of the change. We will no longer be facing new problems, but instead new possibilities. We need to find jobs that will arise out of automation. I think there are two places we start. The first is putting in programs that train students and displaced adults when that time comes, and have them ready for good jobs that require skilled trades. Last session, Senator Adam Pugh on the other side of the aisle and we passed House Bill 2911. What this does is it requires counselors to also give attention and information on various career pathways besides just college. It also looks into apprenticeship programs and career techs. And the other states that have done this have seen a great uptick in participation in the skilled trades. One of the other big problems why we are experiencing a lack of qualified skilled tradesmen and women is because of right-to-work laws. There are many people who have went to other states because they get a higher paid salary and better benefits in non-right-to-work states. The second is diversifying our state's industries. I worked as a roughneck on a drilling rig, and so did my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my dad. All worked for Phillips 66. Oklahoma's energy is very, very important to our economy, but as you already know, many people know that it's time to continue to expand. The jobs on the rigs have already started disappearing as the industry advances, and there are going to be more in even the blue-collar or white-collar jobs that we see. And this means bringing in new industries and new ideas. I was very proud last session to work in cooperation with House Leader John Echols, and we, with the help of Senator Lonnie Paxton, passed the 2018 Industrial Hemp Farm Act. And what that does is it allows for Oklahoma farmers for the first time since 1937 to be able to grow a cash crop that was once very, very lucrative in Oklahoma. And it is federally legal too, which is always a good thing. So in conjunction with institutions of higher education and the federal government and the State Department of Ag, we have farmers who are now able to participate in pilot programs. And just last week, we had in Hennessy, Oklahoma, the very first crop of industrialized hemp grown in Oklahoma since 1937. And we will continue on that pathway, and I see it being a possible multi-$100 million industry and even $1 billion industry. And here's another important thing to note. If Congress, by mid-December, passes the new Farm Bill Act, that will completely eliminate industrial hemp, which is separate than marijuana, from the controlled substance list. And we won't have to do the pilot program anymore, and then our farmers can start growing this cash crop and coming up with new and innovative uses for it. So this is an example of economic growth that was brought about by both parties. That is job creation brought about by both parties. Despite what all the political ads will tell you, neither the Republicans nor the Democrats want to ruin Oklahoma, albeit some ideas are just better and less regressive than others, but we all want to see Oklahoma succeed, where we can support a family and work one job and have a good life with good benefits and a nice retirement. So my answer for where we're headed is where we've got our hands, and that's on the steering wheel. And it's up to us to work together to continue to come up with innovative ideas and how are we going to adapt to the challenges of the future. That will determine where we end up as a state. But even if you disagree with things like the teachers' walkout or other labor issues, I think there's something our state as a whole can take from it. The future is uncertain, and we can either sit at home and let what happens happen, or we can get up, get out, and work hard to make sure Oklahoma uses the changes heading our way in our advantage. And before I go, I just want to say thank you to the Association of County Commissioners and to all of you in this room. As representatives of people we serve, our duty is first and foremost to them. And as county commissioners, I think you might be among the most tuned in people in the state and their needs. I know you care deeply, as I do, about the people you serve. And I know you are here because you want to find ways to make their lives better. And I also hope that you know that it is a good time to be an Oklahoman. Thank you all. I appreciate you very much.
Senator Roger Thompson was elected to the Oklahoma State Senate in November 2014. He represents Senate District 8, which is comprised of Okmulgee and McIntosh counties and parts of Old Fusky and Muskogee County. In 1983, Senator Thompson graduated from Preston Road School of Preaching and later attended Southwestern Bible College and Seminary, where he received his master's in theology in 1999 and his doctorate of theology in 2001. Senator Thompson is president of the News Leaders Company, which owns and publishes the Okima News Leader. His wife, Pamela Thompson, owns Pamela's Flowers and the Okima Office Supply. He is currently president of Okima Community Improvement Association and serves as economic development and consultant for businesses and municipalities. Senator Thompson was a non-lawyer member of the Professional Responsibilities Commission of the Oklahoma State Bar Association from 1992 to 1994. He also served on the Old Fusky County Election Board and the Old Fusky County Excise Board. Senator Thompson is past president of the Okima Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture, past president of the Okima Lions Club, and past president of Rock Creek Youth Camp in Norman, Oklahoma. He served as president of the board and CEO of Good News International Foundation, where he was recognized for partnering with the Secretary of Religion and Science in Ukraine, while operating a publishing and benevolent outreach in Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union. During this same time, he served as advisory member of the Global Christians University. Senator Thompson and his wife, Pamela, were married in 1976 and are parents of 2 children. They are members of the New Beginnings Church. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Roger Thompson.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I wish Steve could travel around on the campaign trail with me just a little bit and tell that same story out there, because that's not what I hear in some places. I heard earlier today that an individual said, "I wouldn't vote for you for dog catcher." And I said, "It's a lucky day I'm not running for dog catcher." So, things are going to be good. It is a difficult election year, and I want to commend all of you who run for election, who stand for election, who says that you want to make Oklahoma better and greater than it is today. And thank you for what you do in rural Oklahoma. You are making a difference. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to have a grand opening over in Okmulgee County on a new $800,000 bridge. And it had taken several years to get there, some of that by funding, the majority of that by environmental studies and being held up by that particular track of thought, and all of you are familiar with that. Makes a difference for the people who live in the area, but also makes a great difference for rural economic development. We need good roads, and in rural Oklahoma, we need economic development. And this is the very beginning point and the very, we might say, heartbeat of what's going forward. Gene didn't tell me how long that I had to speak. He said the 4 of us, we had 2 hours, and so it's good to have Drew here today. And I don't understand why my hair is wider than Drew's hair. I'm not sure about that. In 1974, Drew taught high school in Muskogee, Oklahoma. And I was privileged to sit in his class in 1974 and graduated in 1975, and yet I look a lot older than he does today. I'm not sure how that works. Drew, it's always good to be with you. Folks, I want to talk a little bit about the budget. And my first time in the legislature, my first 2 years, I served as Vice Chair of Transportation and General Government, the last 2 years of Chairman of Finance, and the incoming Chair now of Senate Appropriations. On the Senate side, we have already been working in our respective roles, and so for the last about 2.5 months, I've already been working with the appropriations as Senator David is preparing to be the majority floor leader. My first year, folks, we had a huge deficit. And as we looked at, about $600 million. I thought that was going to be a challenge for us as we went forward until our second year, whenever we looked at about $1.3 billion deficit. In our third year, we were down about $800 billion deficit inside of the state of Oklahoma. This year, we actually had a little bit of a cash flow. Now, we had to do some things to be able to get there, and I'll talk about those shortly. But this year has been better than any year since I have been in the legislature. Whenever I ran for office back in 2014, I ran on a slogan for a better way of life. I was telling my wife I need to come up with another one, I guess, because the budget's been in deficit ever since. Why are we there, and why are we here, and where are we going? Whenever we look at last year, we did everything possible that we could do to keep this state afloat. There were those who felt like at somewhere at the state capitol we had piles of money that was stacked back into a corner that we just need to go out and brush the dust off and say, here it is, you can have it. That's evidenced even by a newspaper article that appeared yesterday from DOC that's asking for this next year of $1.57 billion. Have no idea where that would come from, but I think they're very, very, strong to ask. Last year, folks, we were down to $30 million in our savings account. Not this fiscal year, but last fiscal year. Now, in my bank account, that's a lot of money. In Drew's, probably not so much. But in my bank account, that's a lot of money. But if we can extrapolate that over a $50,000 annual salary, we were down to $62.50 in a savings account. We had began to look for everything that we could find, whether that is removing some of the tax exemption that were on car tax, just so we could move forward. I want to give just a little bit of a historical perspective, and Gene, I am watching my time here a little bit.
You're doing good.
But in 1990, the teachers came to the Capitol, and I want to say up front that I am very much pro-public education. That is all I have ever voted for, endorsed by the OEA and the rural schools. And so I just want to give you a historical perspective. Those who know me know that I deal more in just facts than I do in just jargon. But in 1990, they came to the Capitol, and House Bill 1017 was written. We've had trouble keeping up with House Bill 1017 and keeping it funded. In 1992, the people of Oklahoma said, you will never pass that type of a tax increase again in the state of Oklahoma without a 75% supermajority, and then give the people of Oklahoma 90 days to protest. Since 1992, there has not been a major tax increase in the state of Oklahoma outside of a cigarette tax. This year, monumental. And some said it should not be historical, but we understand the work that was there. Enjoyed speaking with the teachers who came to the Capitol, but the message that we tried to portray to them whenever they came to the Capitol this year, we have been working on this for 15 months, trying to put together a revenue package that would simply pass, that we could begin to change the way that we fund Oklahoma. Now, if you can join that with a demographic shift in Oklahoma, most of those that I'm looking at today are similar to my age, in their early 60s. Some of you have gray hair like I have, some no hair, but I mean, we're in the same age group. And when we begin to look at that, we say back in our age group, whenever we were first married, my wife and I will celebrate 42 years in about 3 weeks. If you had a 3-bedroom house, you bought furniture for 3 bedrooms. You bought furniture for your living room. You had a dining room table. You put pictures on the wall. Our age group did those things. All of those were taxable then and still taxable today in the state of Oklahoma. Back in the early 60s, we had 68% of every product that we sold subject to sales tax. Today, the demographic has changed. Their buying patterns have changed. My daughter would not think of buying a house full of furniture. I have been to her house, and she has some sort of a beanbag type thing that she calls a chair that she wants me to sit on. I have no trouble getting into it. I have a lot of trouble getting out of it. Eat off of a TV tray. Would not think of dropping $100 on a nice piece of furniture, but would drop $100 on a concert ticket just like that. That's not taxable. But you see, whenever we go back to 1992 and State Question 640, for us to even do tax reform in the state of Oklahoma is a 75% vote. And so if we decide that there are some things that we want to do and around us today, I'm talking about Texas, New Mexico, Kansas, Arkansas, the states that we touch, there is $1.4 billion of taxable items within their states that we do not tax in Oklahoma. I feel strongly that if we can do tax reform in the state of Oklahoma, we could actually lower our sales tax and broaden the base and bring in our economy into 2018, 2019, and 2020. Whatever the legislator looks like, whatever governor ends up in office, needs to be leading us in tax reform in Oklahoma. We must be addressing that. Because if we don't, the way that we are buying in the past is not going to finance us in the future. Now, there are some good things that we have done inside the state of Oklahoma over the years. Over the last couple of years, we passed legislation on the internet sales tax. We are a part of the governing states of the Streamlined Sales Tax and Use Agreement. I serve on that national board. Because of that, we were prepared when legislation already signed by the governor and on the books. We were prepared in June this year whenever the Quill versus North Dakota lawsuit back in 1992, that whenever the Supreme Court ruled that you cannot charge sales tax unless you have a nexus in the state. June of this year, Supreme Court overturned that in the Wayfair case out of South Dakota. We were prepared for that and ready to go for that. And because we're part of the Streamlined Sales Tax and Use states, we have already started collecting on that. And Director Maston from the Oklahoma Tax Commission gave testimony in the Senate last week that we have already collected on that $30 million in 2 months. That's because we were ready, we were prepared. This last session, we also passed legislation that says we want to tax third-party vendors on the internet in preparation for the Wayfair case being overturned in June. We were proactive in doing that. We had estimated by the Tax Commission that we would gather about $20.5 million for the year. We banked in our budget last year of $19.6 million in our budget going into the 1017 fund. That's a whole lot of money. But here's the good news. We've had those individuals who have complied with that. And in the first 2 months of this fiscal year, the third-party online vendor sales tax has brought to the state of Oklahoma $15 million. Now, if you extrapolate that for the remainder of the year, folks, that's $90 million a year because the legislature was proactive and said we're going to be ready to go whenever that we're ready to go. We are excited about the revenue that is changing inside the state of Oklahoma. We were actually able to do some cash flow, as I mentioned at the very beginning. In our budget this year of about $7.6 billion. Now keep in mind, we have a little over a $20 billion spend in Oklahoma. Legislature gets to deal with about $7.6 billion of that within our budget, but we left the revolving accounts basically alone. The first year I've been there, we've been able to do that. We've had to look under every cushion, find every dime that we can, but we want those there to grow. Now, we want those agencies held responsible, make sure they're spending their money the way they ought to be spending and moving forward. We have another challenge in the state of Oklahoma is on our computer systems. We have changed over the years. This year, County Commissioner Tim Penley and I had several conversations about funding for our roads and bridges. I like Tim, he's like I am. He deals in straight language and he deals in facts, and here it is. He said we need it, and you did need it. At the same time, we were confronted in the legislature, told by the Attorney General, told by the Secretary of Finance, we needed $30 million to get into our health department. Folks, we have a balanced budget amendment in the state of Oklahoma. You can't do all of it. What are you going to do? In rural health, especially in McIntosh County, we're already struggling with rural health. You may be familiar with the end of that story as they begin to dig down and look into it because we have so much that comes from the federal government into Oklahoma. It is siloed, nothing criminal there, just simply siloed there. Information not passed on to others that should have been passed on to, but the $30 million was still there. And so I've been digging deeper into that. Folks, we've been operating at our health department on 1987 computer software and equipment. We're doing that in several of those that are not talking to each other. 1987. We are to be somewhere around step 24 of the upgrades. They told me the other day in a hearing, we're at step 5. That's unacceptable. It's going to cost money to be able to upgrade that, but it's going to help us in the long run to be able to do that. We must know where the dollars are. This last session, the legislature passed an Agency Performance and Accountability Commission, an outside group to get in and look at all of our agencies and say, where's the money going? What's being spent on the money? What is the performance of that agency? We're doing 5 right now. The speaker who is here with us today, a great friend to work with. The pro tem will receive a report on that we begin to look at, funding that at $2 million because we want to know what's in these agencies all the way down and dig all the way down to find those right numbers. And I think we're going to be able to do that. Now I want to add just a few other things to it. During the teacher walkout this year, that same time period, we remember, maybe not April, but we remember the time period, that the federal government decided that the 1115 waiver that we have used since 2001 for our training hospitals, OSU in Tulsa and OU in Norman, or in Oklahoma City. The 1115 waiver would not only be available for the future, they told us, but we're going to pull that back for 2 quarters. That was the word we received in April of this year. So what that meant to us was that not only were they going to send down the regular money that they would have to those teaching hospitals, they've been approved since 2001 because the training doctors take care of a lot of Medicaid patients that are there. And we would be missing that money, but whenever you added the $34 million the federal government clawed back, we had to add $110 million to the Health Care Authority budget at the very same time. And folks, as far as I'm concerned, that's non-negotiable. We want to be a state that trains doctors. If you talk about rural Oklahoma, we're struggling with rural health care, and if we lose either one of those teaching hospitals, we struggle in rural Oklahoma. We struggle across the state for medical care. Now, we have been working with CMS on the federal end of it. Chairman Wallace out of the House and I have signed letters to them stating, if you will give us one more year, see if we can get acclimated, we promise, cross our heart, hope to die, we'll never ask you for another dime for our teaching hospitals. We think with the hope of our federal delegation, and Congressman Cole has led the way in that conversation, that we may get as much as $68 million back this next year. Now, that could help us to go a long ways, but here's the end of that story, is from this date forward, Oklahoma can say we'll have to be adding $72 million a year to our regular budget just to keep our teaching hospitals open. We want to do that, we can do that, but that's a priority that we have. The other budget things that I want to mention to you is that we have about $130 million already obligated out of this next year's budget. That's the ad valorem reimbursement that will go back into the counties and bond payments. We lost an $80 million lawsuit on workers' compensation in June. It's a one-time payment. Workers' comp was revised in 2014, 2015, and there was a statute that was missed. The governor put forth a letter, said it was the intent of the legislator that we would no longer do the refundable part back to some of the insurance companies. They said, we don't care about the letter. They took it to court. The court said that we really understand it was the intent of the legislator. They took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says we don't care what the intent was. You left one statute that was not changed and awarded them $80 million. That's a one-time payment. We'll make that one-time payment. And by the way, I have filed legislation already to make sure that statute's been changed. We've got some challenges before us. But folks, I want to tell you some things that I really believe about Oklahoma. Representative Dollens talked about being from Oklahoma. I'm proud to be from Oklahoma. Here's what I know about Oklahoma today. It wasn't about a month and a half, 2 months ago that I was downtown Oklahoma City and I met with a company and the officials of that company from California. They are coming to Oklahoma in their aerospace business, which is now the number 2 economic generator in Oklahoma. They're coming to Oklahoma because of the quality of our engineers at OSU and OU. They said, we will come and we will stay and we want to be in Oklahoma because of the work ethic that is here. Folks, that's good news for Oklahoma. I've often said for years we've driven around with car tags that says Oklahoma is okay. Folks, we're not just okay. We're a great state. And sometimes we talk about ourselves being okay. We got people from the outside saying, this is where I want to be. It wasn't long ago, right before session ended, that I get a call. And I'm meeting with some investors who are coming in, part international and part out of Texas, and they want to invest $50 million in the aggregate business down in the Arbuckle region. $50 million. So why are you coming to Oklahoma? And they said because of the work ethic of the people in Oklahoma, they will come to work and they will stay at work and they will get the job done. That's an outside company that says, we want to be in Oklahoma. I just returned from an economic development trip to California. The movie industry is a $1 billion plus industry. They're wanting to be in Oklahoma. How many of you watched the movie I Can Only Imagine? That was a great movie. Met with that company and they said, we want to be in Oklahoma. We want to come to Oklahoma. We want to live in Oklahoma. We want to film in Oklahoma. And so every time you turn around, folks are saying, this is the place we want to be. We talk about our roads and bridges. This year we will top out at $575 million a year in the 8-year road plan. Our deficit roads and bridges have fallen way over 1,000 that they've been taken care of. When we talk about our county road and bridges fund, now this last year, there was an extra money that was taken. That was not the intent of the legislature for that to be done. Whenever that the executive branch decided to veto part of the budget and keep some of the other part of the budget there, that was outside of our hands taking care of that. You'll have to take that up with the executive branch. Our job, our goal is to keep Oklahoma moving, and that includes a plan in rural Oklahoma. I often lift up the county roads and bridges, and I lift up the 8-year road plan to other agencies who come to us and say, we need more money. Give us a plan. You, ladies and gentlemen, have given us that plan. We know where you have the money, where it's going to be spent, and you've given that to us, and we have been able to move forward, and we will continue to move forward. In my remaining moments, I just want to say, where are we headed this next year? Some of the financial reports that come out, we have $1.1 billion more this year than we did last year, and that's true. But keep in mind, we've got expenses we need to pay. That's like going in the first of the month and say, honey, we just got paid and I've got $2,500 in my pocket. And she said, have you paid the rent yet? Folks, we've got about $500 million of expenses we've got to take care of. I've already given you some of the other things there, but we're going to be able to cash flow some things this next year that is highly unusual inside of the state of Oklahoma. And so I know the last few years have been rough. My wife can tell you last year as chairman of finance, there were nights in Okemo, Oklahoma that I was sick at my stomach because we could not find the cash. But those days, hopefully, are behind us. And that's all due to the courage and the leadership of Speaker McCall, Pro Tem Schultz, now Pro Tem Treat, of the men and women in the legislature who was not afraid to stand up and push the green button and say, we didn't come here to raise taxes, but we want to tell you, Oklahoma, this is the type of state that we need to live in. And over the last 2 years, I've pushed a green button for over $893 million in new taxes and expenditures in the state of Oklahoma. And every time I pushed that green button, I cringed. But you see, I'm also the one who filed the legislation to stop the next tax cut, because you cannot keep cutting your income if you cannot pay your bills. We need to pay our bills. We are paying our bills, and we're looking a lot better for the future. Now, I hope this afternoon, Gene asked me to come and kind of give an overview of the budget in 30 minutes. I have given you the 35,500-foot view of where we are. But this is where we are now as a legislature. We're saying, Oklahoma, we've turned. And we've turned that page. And we're moving forward. And on that top of that list are core services. And one of the greatest core services that we have is to make sure we have access on our roads and our bridges in rural Oklahoma. Oklahoma is better than okay. Oklahoma is doing great. And the people outside are telling us that because they say, we want to be here. And we're doing great because of men and women like you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker is from southeastern Oklahoma, Speaker of the House, Representative Charles McCall. Representative Charles McCall represents House District 22 and was first elected in 2012. McCall currently serves as the Oklahoma Republican House designee for Speaker of the House, the first Republican speaker from southeastern Oklahoma. He has served as chairman of the House Appropriation and Budget Subcommittee on Revenue and Taxation. Prior to running for the House of Representatives, he served as mayor of Atoka from 2005 to 2012. He currently serves as CEO and board chairman of Mara State Bank in Atoka. He earned a bachelor's degree in finance from the University of Oklahoma and completed the banking program at the Graduate School of Banking at the University of Colorado. Charles and his wife, Stephanie Ann Hayes McCall, have been married for 22 years. After meeting on a blind date at the University of Oklahoma, Stephanie is a former teacher in the Atoka public school system. The McCalls and their two sons, Chase and Carson, attend Cornerstone Church in Atoka, where Representative McCall serves as church elder and teacher. It's an honor to welcome Speaker of the House, Representative Charles McCall.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you. Ladies and gentlemen, great to be with you here today. And if my wife Stephanie were here, it'd be my honor to introduce the Speaker of my household. And I need to update that bio, Gene. We're going to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary in December of this year. So great to be with you. And before I share a little bit of insight with you in the legislature, I want to once again just say that, first of all, Commissioner Johnny Mann from Garvin County, Commissioner Roy Wayne Blevins from Johnston County, and County Commissioner Philip Culbreth from Atoka County. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to miss you guys, and it's been an honor and pleasure to work with you while I've been in the state legislature. And I wish you the very best in the future, and have really enjoyed and cherished the relationship that we've had. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard a lot of information so far. You know, the famous last words of a state legislature when they take the podium to speak is when they say, "I'll be brief." And but let me just give you a few things that we anticipate. We are less than a week away from a very large election cycle in the state of Oklahoma. Every statewide office is changing. Okay, we will have new people, elected officials in each one of those offices. It's my understanding the Senate, there's 17 races going on the ballot November 6th, and the House of Representatives, there are 73 races. 73. Right now in the House of Representatives, we are guaranteed to have 42 brand new members to the House of Representatives. And that could be a little higher. We'll just have to see what people of the state of Oklahoma do. But we will, as it's been mentioned, we have been in the legislature. We've been in 2 constitutional sessions, 2 special sessions, roughly over the last 2 years. Been a lot of tough votes. There's been a lot of good outcomes for all the political theater and drama that comes along with legislative activities. I've seen surplus until this year only one time in my legislative career, which is 6 years. My very first year when I came into the legislature, we had a surplus that year. Technically, this past year, we had a little bit of a surplus. We are going to, because of those special sessions and those last 2 constitutional sessions, we're on a much better path going forward. I want to recognize and commend each and every one of you at the county level for working with the legislature over these past 2 years. ACCO and the county commissioners worked with the legislator. When money got tight, you were one of the few groups that came and worked with us without much complaint, knowing what the situations look like when money is tight. And we appreciate that very much. I want you to know that I keep a mental log of those groups that work with the legislature during the tough times, because the times ahead of us are going to be very good in comparison, very good. The County Road and Bridge Fund, you guys came in and you voluntarily took a cut in order that the legislature could balance its budgets. And I want you to know it's very important to me that this next session that we in the legislature look at putting that funding back in the County Road and Bridge Fund. We are so excited to get these elections behind us, because on November the 7th, we all know we're going to be right back to work, getting ready for the people of Oklahoma on the next constitutional session that starts in February. We also understand at the state level that the state will not be successful unless the counties are successful in the state of Oklahoma. And I know you have lots of challenges. In fact, you know, I never complain about rain. It's always a blessing to have rain. But man, I know you guys get the calls every time it rains. The graders got to be back out grading roads and fixing things. And you've got to have resources. You've got to have equipment, and you've got to have dollars to complete these projects. And as much as we are proud at the state level of the ODOT 8-year plan and all the progress that has been made in those state highways and those state bridges, it's the counties that have to maintain the most miles of roads and bridges throughout the state. And so for my county commissioners that are here today, I see a few others that I didn't mention that I will continue to work with. And to all of you, I want to say thank you. I want you to know that the legislature realizes that this is a challenge, but it's a worthy challenge. And our constituencies, those who we represent, when a road project is completed, a new bridge is replaced, those are tangible. Those are tangible. People can go out and see those. They drive on them every day. And those are things that people they see progress. So we will continue. I'm looking forward to the 57th legislature, let me tell you. After the last 2 years that we've had, I'm proud of the men and women that I've had the opportunity to serve with over the past 2 years that had to make some really tough decisions and to make some historic progress. In talking to the Speaker of the House back in 1990, when House Bill 1017 finally passed. It was 28 years ago since a revenue package came out of the House of Representatives, 28 years ago. They were in special sessions spanning multiple months as well, trying to get only 51 votes. For us that serve today, we almost laugh at that because the constitutional requirement for a revenue package now is 3/4. So that's 76 votes in the House of Representatives, and it's the first time it's ever been attained in our chamber. So I'm thankful that we're on a better path. We are excited about next year in the 57th legislature, and I want to assure you that we in the legislature will be working very closely with your ACCO leadership to make great advancements in the counties throughout the state of Oklahoma. Thank you so much for letting me share a few words with you. Enjoy the rest of your conference. God bless you, and I can't wait for 2019 and the 57th legislature. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When Gene asked me would I introduce this next guy, I said, sure, I will. Then he hands me this catalog here. I said, Lord, have mercy. You want me to read all that? Gene said, well, just kind of pick the highlights out. So I was thinking, I go back to my room, I'm doing a little praying. You see, I'm a praying man. And that's the most important thing is get things right with the Lord first, amen? So I noticed down here in the bottom part of that page, it said he's an ordained elder. So that means he's a servant of the Most High God, amen? He served the United States government in the Navy. He served his district in Muskogee as district attorney. He served as the state attorney general in the state of Oklahoma. This man has a servant's heart. And I see here that he's the people's champion. Now, when I think about the people's champion, I'm going back to the WWE days. Now, I don't know if any of y'all ever watched the WWE, but in McCurtain County, that's big business. Big business. The people's champion. And I think every time that guy come out to wrestle, they'd get up there and they'd get that microphone. They'd get up there real close and they'd say, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching on TV, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Drew Edmondson. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew Edmondson.
you. Well, I hadn't had that before. Thank you. Thank you. I was down in McCurtain County last week, and I didn't know how they introduced me down there. And by the way, I had to explain to some people that when you go to McCurtain County, you can't just go to Idabel, and you can't just go to Broken Bow. If you go to one, you got to go to the other one. And now it's getting to where you have to go to Hochtown, too. It's growing up pretty fast. I want to thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here with you. And it was great to hear from both Speaker McCall and Senator Thompson about what things are looking like next year. And it convinced me over again that we're going to be talking every day once that session starts, just to keep track of what needs to be done. We all know what happened to the gasoline money because of the problems that we were having with the state budget. We've already heard about that. We know about it. What I want to mention just briefly in passing is that I have commended the legislature at every opportunity in the speeches that I have made since April, talking about how difficult it must have been to get that 75% for that revenue package. We know it wasn't everything the teachers were asking for. It wasn't everything that Step Up Oklahoma was asking for, but you got to give credit where credit's due. It was not easy to get what they got. So we've got over $400 million in additional revenue coming in for the session in 2019. And that's a good thing. It's really going to help fund the teacher pay raise and other needs of state government. But there's something that we need to be mindful of written into the legislation, and this is good news for you all, is that after 2019, the 3 cents on gasoline and the 6 cents on diesel go back to the Department of Transportation. That's where the gasoline money's supposed to go. It's going to be used in the first year to help fund this pay raise, but it goes back to the Department of Transportation after the first year. And the $1 increase on a price of a pack of cigarettes after the first year goes to the Department of Health. So the mandated $6,000 pay raise for teachers, now in the legislation they say that will be filled in, we'll fill in those holes with appropriated dollars, but we've got to make sure that the dollars are there to appropriate. And that's why I have called for putting the gross production tax back at 7%, where it used to be, to make sure the dollars are there to do what needs to be done in state government. It's why I've also called for doing away with the capital gains loophole on income tax. We used to tax capital gains as ordinary income tax. In 2005, we tried an experiment on the theory that if we exempted capital gains from income tax, people would reinvest that money and it would generate more revenue than it cost. Very good theory. It didn't work. Over a 5-year period, according to the experts that were hired by the Tax Incentive Review Commission, it generated $9 million in additional revenue and cost us $474 million in lost revenue. So the experts said that one needs to be done away with. And by the way, over 70% of that $474 million was claimed by people who already earned in excess of $1 million a year. So this is not a tax break for ordinary middle-income people in Oklahoma. It primarily benefited millionaires. And the Senate, to their credit, took up that challenge and passed a repealer on the capital gains tax in the last session of the legislature. It bogged down on the House side, not because of the measure itself, but because of a question of how it would affect cow-calf operations. And the feeling in the House that we don't want to hurt farmers, we don't want to hurt ranchers, and we want to make sure that that doesn't affect cow-calf operations. Now, everybody can talk to their own tax accountant. I talked to mine, and he says capital gains doesn't affect cow-calf operations. People don't keep calves long enough for them to qualify for the number of years it takes to qualify as a capital gain. That's ordinary income. If you're in the cow-calf business, that's your income, and you pay ordinary income tax on it. Then they said, well, we'll write an exemption in for cow-calf operations. And somebody said, well, that'd be special legislation, that'd be unconstitutional. I don't think so. We've exempted a lot of things from taxation surrounding agriculture, and none of it's been successfully challenged yet. They're exempt from sales tax down at the feed and seed. They have different kind of, well, they used to have different kind of farm tags. I'm not sure whether they still do or not. But we have made exceptions for agricultural operations, and I think this would be all right if we did it. Anyway, they didn't have time to finish all those discussions, and so it bogged down and didn't get passed. Let's try again. That's one that is not necessary. The theory upon which it was passed did not work, so let's back up. They're estimating at least $130 million annual revenue if we do away with that loophole and put it back the way it was in 2004, that you pay ordinary income tax on capital gains. And the third item on my revenue package is the other 50 cents on a pack of cigarettes. It was introduced at $1.50. As I recall, it actually passed at $1.50, but it didn't get the 75%. So they ended up passing it as $1. And I want to be honest with everybody in this room, the hang up on that was not anybody sitting here. It was the Democrats in the House that were saying this would hurt low-income people that need cheap cigarettes. My response to that to my Democratic friends was I was instrumental in creating the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust out of the proceeds of the tobacco litigation, and anybody who needs patches or gum to quit smoking, they can get it for free from my tobacco trust. And they'll be better off if they quit smoking. They don't have to pay that extra 50 cents. They can get free gum, and they'll live longer, healthier lives. So we can have a win-win-win situation. So I'm looking forward, Speaker McCall, to working with you, and same with you, Senator Thompson, on these issues and others when the legislative session starts next year. And I want to be very clear, somebody has a better idea, I'm here. I'm ready to listen, I'm ready to work with you, and I have no pride of authorship on the three ideas that I've come up with. But I think it's important to note that for most Oklahomans, none of them will affect your income tax rate, and none of them will raise your sales tax, except if you're a smoker. So these are tax measures, revenue measures that can generate funds for state government. Make sure, my fear is if we don't have additional revenues coming in, that when the sales tax, when the tobacco tax and the gasoline tax comes time to go back, when it comes time to go back to the Department of Transportation and the Department of Health, that there'll be more concern over that turning the pay raise into an unfunded mandate, and they may hold off putting that gasoline money back at the Department of Transportation so it does not become an unfunded mandate on our school districts. All of those are roads and bridges that we're going to cross when we get to them, but my fear is if we don't resolve these issues early and properly, there won't be roads and bridges to cross. So we want to keep that 8-year rolling highway plan on schedule, and we want to keep the 5-year road and bridge plans for county government on schedule too. We're going to stop taking your gasoline money. We're going to let you spend it on where it belongs, and that's keeping roads and bridges safe and transportable in the state of Oklahoma. I really enjoyed my tour through Little Dixie. We started off in Ada and went from Ada down to McAllister. Had a good time in McAllister. Not everybody can say that. But we had a good time in McAllister. Went from there to Wilburton and in Latimer County. Latimer County here, I learned something on this trip because we had George Nye with us. And he knows all the stories, and if he doesn't know them, he'll make some up. But George Nye told us, I hope somebody can tell me whether this is absolutely true because I haven't looked it up in Oklahoma place names yet, that Wilburton was named after a gentleman named Will Burton. Anybody ever heard that story before? Anybody know if it's true? Well, I'll check it out, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat it until I'm told otherwise. Will Burton gave us Wilburton, the county seat of Latimer County. I mentioned Wilburton because the hospital closed there recently. And in the group that I met with in the town hall, the chairman, he may be the former chairman, I don't know if they still have a hospital board if they don't have a hospital, but the person who was chairman of the hospital board got my question: if we'd opted into the Medicaid expansion 8 years ago, would that hospital still be open? And he said, no question about it. That hospital would still be open if the people who had qualified for Medicaid under the Medicaid expansion had had their card and the expenses of people going to that hospital had been reimbursed fully under that Medicaid expansion. Let me explain that just a little bit. Medicaid expansion means we're going to take people who earn 150% of the poverty level and make them eligible for Medicaid payment. Now, it's not welfare, this is medical care. And it's medical care provided by our tax dollars, which are currently going to Washington, D.C., and are being used to pay for the medical expenses of people in other states instead of coming back here to Oklahoma to pay for the medical expenses of our own people. These are people who work full-time, earn too much to qualify for Medicaid, and not enough to opt into the insurance pool and purchase private health insurance, so they're in a gap. They never see the money. The money does not go to them. They get a card that says they can go to the doctor or the hospital and have their medical bill paid for. The money goes to the hospital, goes to the clinic, it goes to the doctor, and it keeps hospitals open. My opponent and I differ on that. He would not opt into the Medicaid expansion. That's, his view, and he's entitled to it. And we quibbled over whether it would have saved the hospital in Pauls Valley. I don't know whether it would have or not, but I went on down to Idabel and spoke to the acting director of the McCurtain County Hospital in Idabel and asked him the same question because they're struggling in that hospital right now. Would the Medicaid expansion help? And he said, no question about it. Expanding Medicaid would help us stay open in Idabel in McCurtain County. It's too late to ask the folks at the hospital in Frederick because it's closed, or the hospital in Sayre because it's closed, or the hospital in Eufaula because it's closed. If we want to save rural Oklahoma, it's as important to keep your hospital open as it is to keep your school open, and I will work to do both. National statistics, health statistics, have lowered Oklahomans' projected life expectancy. It's gone down in Oklahoma. We don't expect that in a state of the United States. We don't expect our life expectancy to ever go down. We had 3 communities in Oklahoma listed in a Washington Post article as having the lowest life expectancies in the nation. They were in Stillwell in Adair County and both Eufaula and Shakota in McIntosh County, with life expectancies in those 3 communities in the 50s. We don't expect that in an industrialized country or in the state of Oklahoma. It is not acceptable. We have got to change the way we do business. We have to do better by our people. I understand we've been strapped for cash over the last few years. We've got to change that. We've got to make sure that the revenues are available to do the things that need to be done. The Medicaid expansion is a 10% match. We fight for 10% road money. As many highways as we can get where our match is only 10%, we say bring it on, because we know that that kind of development generates economic activity and fills the revenues to take the place of the 10%. The same thing will be true with Medicaid expansion. We have to look for tax incentives that either don't work, never worked, or have fulfilled their purpose. If they have fulfilled their purpose, they need to go. If they have never worked, they need to go. We need to look at loopholes. We need to look at where the state of Oklahoma is an outlier. You know, if every other state in the nation taxes a particular item and we don't, we got to figure out if we're wrong or 49 states are wrong. And we've got to look at those because, you know, doing away with a loophole is a 51, not a 75. And we've got to be finding those because we don't want to go decades trying to find another item where we can get a 75% vote out of the legislature. And by the way, I hope after the struggles we went through in April of this year that there is some appetite in the legislature for drafting an initiative, and not an initiative petition, drafting a petition to go on the ballot to either repeal or modify State Question 640, which put that 75% hurdle on the books. For a school bond, it's only 60%. And I hope I can work with legislative leadership to come up with a proposal that is agreeable to everybody, that we ought to bring it down, maybe not to zero, maybe not repeal, but at least bring it down to something that we're used to. And I would prefer, if we're going to bring it down for tax increases, that we ought to have the same percentage required for a tax decrease. If the revenue code is that important, you'll make a supermajority to either raise taxes or lower taxes. That way it doesn't operate like a ratchet, where all you can do is lower them and it clicks down and you can never get them back up. Now, these are ideas that are at least worthy of discussion, and I'm looking forward to discussing them on a regular basis after this election is over. I deeply appreciate what you all do. Everybody here, it wasn't part of my introduction, but I probably ought to mention it. My grandfather was a county commissioner in Muskogee County, and he raised Ed and Howard, who went off and got involved in politics, and they raised me, and I went off and got in politics. But it all started with a county commissioner in Muskogee. He was the leader of the Klan, and he got us involved in public service. I appreciate what you do. The 10 years that I was DA in Muskogee, every Monday morning, people knew where to find me because I was in the county commissioners meeting. And I enjoyed those meetings. We never in 10 years had an agenda that complied with the Open Meetings Act. We didn't. And I suppose that was my responsibility as DA. But, you know, the county clerk knew, the DA knew, anybody who complained about it, the commissioners say, okay, you draft the agenda. I didn't want to draft the agenda, but they would have an item on the agenda that just said Drew Edmondson. And when they got to that item on the agenda, they'd say, the chairman would say, well, Drew, do you have anything for us? And I'd say, no. And then they'd say, okay, we'll go on to the next item. You know, I wasn't going to tell them to take that off, you know, but it was on there every time. We did comply with the executive session laws, and we did not go into executive session unless it was a statutory reason to go into executive session. But other than that, the agendas in Muskogee County for the 10 years that I was DA gave everybody a kind of a general idea of what we were going to talk about, but that was about it. And nobody wanted to volunteer to take that chore over. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with the commissioners, and I hope they enjoyed working with me. It was a good time. And I'm looking forward to working with you. And Gene, I hope you're not shy about coming to see me if I'm off base on something or if there's something that we need to be doing that we're not doing.
You can count.
I've never known you to be shy about that, and so I have faith that you'll continue doing it. We can build a great state. We have a great state. You know, we have great assets, we have great people. What we want to do is build this state to where our children and grandchildren will want to stay here and will have a job that will let them stay here. And we want to be able to visit our grandchildren, you know, with a 30-minute drive instead of an airplane flight across the country. We want to enjoy life, but we want our children and grandchildren to want to be in Oklahoma. And I'm looking forward to the day when teachers in Texas come to Oklahoma because the pay is competitive and the quality of life is better. Don't tell me we can't do it. We can do it, and we're going to start doing it in January of 2019. So thank you for having me here. I deeply appreciate what you do. Look forward to working with you.
got a whole row up here.
Oh.
Do I? Man, I know I'm bad, but everybody didn't have to leave at the same time. I hope this next gentleman, he's not on our brochure, so I don't have a bio. Yes. I already said it. They can go ahead and go.
We're gonna have a drawing.
We're going to have a drawing, have lots of prizes. But I know this next gentleman personally. He's from Cherokee County, been there several years. He can do his own bio when he gets up here. It's John Cox. He's run for state superintendent. He's been at Peggs, Oklahoma for 20 years, 25 years. Peggs is in my district. John's in my district. If he can get along with the folks in Peggs, Oklahoma, he ought to be good anywhere. They're about 50-50, and it's always changing 1%. So he's a real good guy. He's still a practicing superintendent of Peggs. His wife, we're hoping, will be a state rep in 86, District 86. I think she's going to make it. It would be nice to have her in there, have him as state superintendent. We might get a lot done for our schools. So give him a chance to talk to you and give him a thought when you go to the polls. Okay, John?
Well, Dr. John Cox, I'm working extremely hard to be your next state superintendent. And I have to tell you, the first time that I met Doug Hubbard was we had to get a 6-inch line up to our school for our fire system in our gym. And so I asked him to help us. And so I go down the road, and he's actually in the ditch helping put the line in. And from that day, 12 years ago, I've been sold on our county commissioner. And what you do for us, for our public schools every day, your coordination with us, you know the lack of money that we have and how we have to be extremely efficient. You help us. So I'm really here to say thank you because I've been here several times, and this group means a lot to me. You are the elected officials through the entire state of Oklahoma. So if you go out and you're John Cox in those counties and you let people know that I will be there for you and that I will be there for your families, I will win. And not only will I win, but public schools in Oklahoma will win. Our children, bottom line, will win. And I promise, Gene, I'd only take about 3 minutes. But how many here are affected by public schools, whether you're a pawpaw or you have kids in school or you got neighbors or you hire people from our public schools? Raise your hand if you do that. It impacts everybody, regardless of where you're at. This position is one of the most important positions in the state because it affects everything that we do in our life. We provide the foundation for every child. And I don't want to be state superintendent. I did not want to run, but the fact is I had to. There is no other choice but to have to run because we have some things we've got to get done. And just a couple of things, I want to get rid of the high-stakes testing that we're doing where we test prep for 2 months, waste time, and we take a test and get the results 4 months later and we don't even use them. We need to get rid of that because the reason we need to get rid of it is because it ties teachers to a script. And they are so tired of it and so burned out of it that if we want to retain our great teachers and keep them in this state, we need to do away with that and let them teach again. And so I've got their backs. And once they can teach again, then it's going to bring the love of learning back, and they're going to tell their own kids that they need to come into teaching. As professionals, as education professionals across this state, we don't even talk our own kids into being teachers. We don't want them to be teachers. But used to, if your dad and mom was a teacher, there is a good chance you became a teacher because you saw what they were doing. But I'm out here just asking for your help to go back. We got tomorrow's early voting, and I've got Republicans, Independents, and Democrats all across this state that look at me as someone that's just an educator and someone that wants to help our children. That's what they're looking at. I am so excited about this because I want to come back to this group and say thank you again for helping me get elected, for helping me be in there for children. We have servants' hearts. Your county commissioners, you have servants' hearts. That's the only reason you're in it, because you want to help people on the front line. I want to help people on the front line. So that workforce development, extremely important. You want quality workers already coming into your place that you can hire. Right now we have over 3/4 of our students who will not go to college or who do not finish college, over 75%. So let's give value and meaning to them in high school so they won't drop out. Let the auto mechanic person, the one who loves tinkering on cars, be the best that he can be. And then he can make 35, 40, 50,000 coming out of high school as a 19-year-old. I wish I had that opportunity. I wish I could see that opportunity to be nursing, welding, all the different trades that we can have. And then you can hire them as county commissioners coming into your field and bringing them on, and they would be qualified workers. That's the gap that we're missing. Let's do something for that child, for that student that needs help. Main reason I'm here today is just to say thank you so much for everything that you do. And I'm going to push as hard as I can to keep preaching and talking about our children and what we can do best for them. So thank you so much, and let's do it. Let's make this happen. Thank you.
Okay. I hope John wasn't expecting what Jimmy done for Drew there on the introduction. That was a pretty exciting time, wasn't it? So, all right, we have a special presentation that somebody from CED2 is wanting to make. Scotty, would you like to come up? This is Scott Briers. He's our CED manager.
Okay, this presentation is for former County Commissioner of Muskogee County, Mr. Gene Wallace. Has to do with a project that was started in 2008, and Gene was County Commissioner of Muskogee County at that time. And this was ranked as the #1 priority in our 8 counties for CED2. And this job was finished up a little over a year ago. And I just would like to present Mr. Wallace with this plaque that has everybody listed on the plaque that was involved with the project. And Gene, he was a big player in getting this started about dealing with the Corps, dealing with them on a weekly basis, I believe, and then they had to stop the project because they thought there was a Indian cemetery, and this was going to shut the project down. So just another thing we have to deal with anytime the counties try to have a bridge or road project, we have to deal with the environmental, utilities. It's just one thing after another. But this was before I went to work at CED, and I guess Gene, he took it on himself to contact the Corps, utility people, and he, made it happen. And here we have a finished product, and it sits there over the Grand River between Fort Gibson and OK. And so it's a great finish. So anyway, Gene, we'd like to present you with this.
Well, thank you. Well, what a pleasant surprise. Scotty, let me tell you. When you work in public service, you compare yourself with other walks of life. And for people who win the Stanley Cup, or they win the World Series, or they win the Super Bowl and get the big trophy, for county commissioners, these are the trophies that we work for every day. This project was started and funded and selected #1 priority for a bridge that was built in 1919, 791 feet long, one of the longest bridges the county had responsibility for. We had U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we had Corps of Engineers, we had the Historical Society for Ancient Cemeteries, we had utilities, we had, I called the Corps of Engineers every Friday. This is a product of blood, sweat, and swearing. They got so sick of me calling saying, what in the is going on? But these are the things that if you're a spouse in this audience and your husband or your wife is engaged in public service or in the legislature, these are our rewards. And they're for the other people, and we know that. But you know, I would be absolutely guilty if I didn't acknowledge something. I want to introduce the real commissioner in our household that took the phone calls, took the abuse, couldn't go to Walmart, couldn't go to the grocery store, couldn't go any place that someone didn't stop her and say, when's he going to fix my road? I'd love to introduce to you my lovely wife, Annette, who is the light of my life and badge of my courage. Annette, stand up if you will. You know, as we plan these programs, we want to make them informational, we want to make them fun. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think we'd go to the church and the circus in the same day. So, Brother Westbrook, you brought us to church and you brought us to the circus. And I think everybody enjoyed the trip all the way through it. But we're going to have some additional presenters. Is Nody Lansford here? Nody is going to make a presentation on behalf of our continuing education with OSU, and then we're going to have a Rhodes Scholar program. So, Nody, if you'll come forward.
Thank you, Gene. I want to say, first of all, that I probably don't need to inform you that people at OSU are walking around strutting a little taller, heads a little higher, very pleased to have somehow beat that team from down south, University of Texas this past weekend, breathe some new life into the student body and everybody that works there. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here today. I feel like I should say something about running for office, although I'm not, but it did occur to me that my wife is flying out tomorrow morning to see her parents, and if she flies back next week after Election Day, I guess I won, so that'll be a good thing. Now, all of you know that we've got a new certification program going, and we've been in the process of updating transcripts, rechecking facts, working with a programmer, and the sad news, Gene, is that I don't have the programmer's work done just yet. So we know some people are due certificates, but we haven't verified all the people that are due certificates. So we're not actually passing out certificates today. If you are due one and you want it sooner rather than later, contact me and we will get that to you, and we'll make the public presentation a little bit later for our CTP program. Now, we're very pleased that one of the new courses in the program is actually going to be presented tomorrow morning here at the conference. And so you will get that easily, the introduction to purchasing. And I think there's some indication, Gene, that if this is successful, we might do some more in the future. We did have open meetings, open records. I'm sorry Mr. Edmondson is gone to hear this, but we had a great presentation just the other day at the ACCO building. Half a day on open meetings, half a day on open records. I think everybody that was there agreed that it was a great presentation by a new speaker that we haven't used in the class in the classes so far. A lot of you are enjoying the webinars we're doing, so we're presenting things by distance education, and we're in the process of developing some by computer also, so that you can log on, get some training for an hour or two, log off, come back and complete that later on. Another program that we're doing that you probably haven't heard about is having to do with county financial data. We've got a new database designed, and if I get the grant that I've applied for, we'll have that data available to you online so you can search it. Randy Robinson or Gene, when they call me and ask for certain data, we can provide that very easily, or you can get it yourself from that online portal. So we're always open to your input. Look forward to hearing from you and presenting those certificates in the near future. Thank you for your time. It's always great to be with you. Thank you.
You know, this is somewhat of an experiment, but we hope it's a very successful experiment. What the board wanted to do was try to make it easier for the elected officials and their support personnel not to have to go to two places. And by incorporating these classes in your conference, you know, we think it's more cost effective. We think it is more a great learning environment. You get to meet other people who do the same thing you do. And the best thing is that we're able to give you earned credit for attending. You know, and we got the second class, which will be law enforcement, who is going to receive CLEAT extended hours for attending what we think is going to be an outstanding program tomorrow concerning the drugs effect on the state of Oklahoma and law enforcement. So our next presenter is Darla with the LTAP program. Are you here, Darla? Darla, if you'll come forward. You know, one of the most valuable programs that we offer in the pursuit of continuing education is the Rhodes Scholars Program, which takes a lot of time and effort and attention, and they really need to be acknowledged. So, Darla?
Thank you, Gene. We're really excited to be here today. We've got 3 people who have taken all the 8 classes to get their Red Scholar certificate. And this is not a small endeavor for these people. I know that it takes a lot of time for them to come to these classes, and so it's really exciting whenever we get to present these certificates to them. Here we go. I'll go back here. I'm with the local technical assistance program at Oklahoma State University. We have had a change in management. Mikey Hingston retired in August, and I'll update you on the last slide about our manager. These are the courses that the person has to take to receive their Rhodes Scholar certificate. There's 8 of them that they have to take. And also, I've brought some information that I put over on the table over there about, we have other classes besides the Rhodes Scholar classes too. But today, we're focusing on the Rhodes Scholar since we've got these certificates. The first person is Nicholas Stein with Canadian County District 1. Is he here?
Way to go, Nicholas. Congratulations.
And when we're finished, if you'll come over here to this northeast corner and we'll take pictures. The next one is Kurt Sharp from Noble County District 1. There's also a press release that I'm giving everyone to take to your local newspaper.
Good job.
Our last one is Michael Perry, and he's from Oklahoma County District 2, and he's been here the whole time waiting to get this. He's District 2, sorry about that. I've got 2 on here.
As long as we get it right there.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just an update on the LTAP manager. There were interviews done on October the 15th. Then the committee forwarded their recommendations to our assistant dean, and he's going to make the final decision. And hopefully it's really soon because I'm ready to have the new LTAP manager around. So thank you for your time and attention, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Darla.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darla. And thank you guys for spending the time and effort for those achievements. You'll be much more valuable to your county as a product of it. I hope everybody looks at this agenda. You know, we have a theme, and this one is gathering for the future to meet the fall, you know, the fall period. But it says more than that. First of all, whether it's our newsletter or whether it's our agenda, the one thing I hope you notice is we've got kind of a new graphic artist on staff. We got a young man who came to the staff. We visited with his instructors. He was young, we knew that, but he has fit like a glove. And he has brought new energy and new ideas and new graphic art to your programs. So please take an opportunity to look at it. Thank him in the hallway. There's a guy back here in the back, C.J. Cook. Thank you, C.J.